Okay, these are the video notes for Slope-Intercept Form. So you may have seen these type of problems before and dealt with this, but this is just the beginning. We're going to go a little bit, obviously a little bit further into finding the equation of lines, graphing equation of lines, all that kind of stuff. So there's a couple forms that we're gonna learn. The first one is the slope-intercept form. So we'll zoom in here so I can write nice. The slope-intercept form of an equation is, and I'll write it out over here, is y equals mx plus b. Now y and x are variables, just like we've seen them before. Y and x they'll always be variables. The m and the b are both numbers, and they're numbers in which you will find the value for. So m, if you remember from what we talked about before, m is slope. And b is your y-intercept. That's why this form is called the slope-intercept form, because it gives you the slope and the intercept of a particular equation. And once you have the slope and the intercept of a line, you can graph it. So we're going to work with those. So let's do example 1. Now example 1 is already in the correct format. It's in the y equals mx plus b. So when identifying the slope and intercept, you don't need to do anything. You just literally just rewrite those. So the slope is going to be -2, and the y-intercept is going to be 7. Okay, that's simple. Now, where it becomes difficult is when you have a problem like this, and it's not quite in the correct format. So what we need to do is we need to put it in the correct format. So we need to solve for y. Because the format is y equals mx plus b, we need to solve for y. So everything else on this left side needs to go over here except for the y. Everything else goes over here. So I'm going to start by, and this is what you always start by, you always move the x first. Always, always, always move your x first. Those will cancel. I'm left with -3y equals, and since these do not combine, they're not like terms, we have to leave them separate, so it's -6x and plus 18. And then finally, to get rid of the -3, we divide everything by -3. So I'll get y equals -6 divided by -3 is +2. And then 18 divided by -3 is -6. Now that it's in the correct format, we now can identify our slope is 2 and our y-intercept is -6. So the big key in these first parts here is making sure that the equation is in the correct format. Once it's in the correct format, you can then identify your slope and your y-intercept. That's these values right here, and these values right here. So go ahead, and I'm going to have you try A, B, and C here. So I'm going to pause the video, or I'm going to you pause the video and go ahead and try and see if you can do A, B, and C. The only thing is here with C, there's a typo. This should have been minus. So just change it to a minus sign. And go ahead and try A, B, and C. Okay, there's the answer to letter A. Hopefully that was pretty easy. It's already in the right format, so you just had to identify slope and the y-intercept. Now on to B. Now I bring us here and stop here because there's an interesting piece here. So I have to put it in the correct format by solving for y. So I subtracted the x over to this side. Since they're not like terms, they do not combine, so you write them separate. Okay, I always write the x first just because in the format the x is first. It's y equals mx plus b. So the x comes first. So I wrote the x first here, brought down the 2y, and this is what I'm left with. At this point, you have something funny here. So you have y equals, I don't know what's going on here, but negative x, you need to remember that if if a variable does not have an x or does not have a number, we assume it to be 1. So there is a 1 right there. So it's negative 1x. So negative 1 over 2x, and then 8 over 2 is 4. So then we can identify our slope is m equals negative 1/2, and b is 4. Okay, now on to C. And now I stop here, putting a line to the equal sign. I had to move the 2x over, so I added 2x. You always move the x first. So I add the 2x over, and so I'm left with negative 6y equals 2x. Divide by negative 6, divide by negative 6, and then 2 over negative 6 reduces to negative 1/3 x. Now here's a certain situation where I have the slope. Now the slope is always connected to the x, so slope is negative 1/3, but I don't have a y-intercept. There's nothing over here. There is something there, you just can't see it because its value is 0. So it's negative 1/3 x plus 0 essentially, and so there is your slope and y-intercept. Okay. Now, the second part of this is now going to be graphing the lines. All you need is a slope and a y-intercept. So, here we are left with this example. Okay, y equals 3x minus 1, and we're going to identify the slope is 3, and the y-intercept is negative 1. So, we graph. The first thing we're going to graph, you always, the first thing you're going to graph is your y-intercept. So that is where it is crossing the y-axis. Where is it going to cross the y-axis? Remember that this is your y-axis. So where is it going to cross? Well, we got negative 1. So where is negative 1? Right here. A nice big dot. Sorry, my dot is kind of bad, but from there, step 3, use the slope to plot another point. The slope is 3. And now we like when we're graphing, we want our slopes to be fractions. So I'm going to just put a 1 underneath it. So it's 3 over 1. Remember that the top value is the change in y. It's what it's going up or down. Okay, and then the bottom number is always going to be to the right. So the top number of 3 means that it is going, since it's a positive slope, I know that I'm going to go up 3 and then over 1. So 1, 2, 3 over 1. And then the step 4 now is to draw a line through your dots. And that's graphing an equation. Okay. If you need to rewatch the video, you can always drag back, pause, and rewatch certain parts of it. if it doesn't make any sense. Now, with example number 3, we have some issues here, obviously, because the equation that's up here is not in the correct format. So go ahead and put the equation in the correct format. I'll start it off by rewriting it down here. Go ahead and put it in the correct format. Okay, so I have the answer there, and so you minus the 2x over, so I get 3y equals negative 2x plus 9. Divide everything by 3, and this is what I get. So first things first, I need to identify the slope. Okay, m is negative 2 over 3, and then my y-intercept is positive 3. We always again start with our y-intercept. Okay, that means where on the y-axis is it going to cross? Okay, where is it going to cross? Well, we got 3, so it's going to cross at 3. Then we use our slope to plot the other point. Remember, the top number is up or down. Since the fraction is negative, that means we're going down. Okay, top number, okay, this number right here is up or down. Since it's negative, that means we're going to go down 2 over 3. So down 1, 2 over 3. And then draw our line. Something like that. Hopefully your lines are straighter than that, but that is how you do it. So I want you to go ahead and try examples, or try A and B, and then pause the video, go ahead and try it, and then you can check your answers once I'm done. Okay, so here's A. I found the slope to be 2 and y-intercept to be 4. Sometimes your graph, your line's going to go off of your graph, and that's okay. One thing you can always do also is, since the slope was 2, meaning 2 over 1, remember we want ours to be a fraction, 2 over 1, that means I'm going to go up 2 over 1. Now, once you do that, and if you see it goes off, one way you can kind of, if it goes off the graph, is to go backwards. So instead of going up to right 1, you can go down 2 and left 1 and put a dot down here, and that way your graph doesn't go off. So that's A. Go ahead and pause the video, try B, and I'll show you the answer in a minute. Okay, there is B. So we can, we had to solve for y first, put it in the y equals mx plus b format, moving the 3x over, so I have minus 3x minus 2, and I divided everything by 2, and so I got my equation to be, I got my equation to be this value right here. And then from there, slope is negative 3 over 2, and y-intercept is negative 1. Now, let's see here. So when graphing it, remember you start at your y-intercept at negative 1. My slope is negative, which means I'm going to go down, and so my top number is 3, so down 3 over 2. So I went down 3 over 2, and then just to show you, you can go backwards. Instead of going down 3, right 2, I can go completely opposite and go up 3, left 2 to find the other dot. And that other dot is right here. Okay, down 3, right 2. You can also go backwards by going up 3, left 2. So there's that. Now the question, this question here says, how does changing the slope affect the graph of the line? Okay, you should have something written here to say that if we change the slope, that the tilt of the line changes. Notice how the slope here is positive, and so it goes up, and here it goes down. But changing the slope is going to change the tilt of the line. It's going to still remain a straight line, but it does tilt the graph. And then then the next one says, how does changing the y-intercept affect the line? Changing the y-intercept, take for example this line right here. If I just change the y-intercept to, let's say, 1, okay, is the line itself going to change? No, the line is still going to be going up like this. But instead of going up right here, the y-intercept is going to be 1, so now it's going to be going right here. It just shifts the line over, or shifts it down. So slope actually will change the line. It changes the tilt, whereas the y-intercept only shifts the line. Like this one here. Let's say instead of the y-intercept being -1, we made it 5. So we made it up here. So the line is still going to remain the same. It's just going to shift up here to be at 5. Okay, so you should have something along those lines written right there. And now this part here, special cases. These are your, remember we went over these are your flat lines and your undefined lines. Okay, a y line, okay, this is a y line. Why I call it a y line is because it says y equals, and that is it. It's a y line. A y line will only cross the y-axis. Okay, a y line will only cross the y-axis. Where do you think it's going to cross the y-axis? Well, probably at 3. So where is 3 on the y-axis? We go here. 3 looks like it's right here. Okay, a y line will never ever cross the x-axis. It's a y line, so it only crosses the y-axis. What kind of line would you draw that would never ever cross the x-axis? Well, that would have to be a line that goes straight across. Okay, it's a y line. It only crosses the y-axis. That line right there will never ever cross the x-axis. Okay, it's a y line. Now, just the opposite, when we look at an x line, same thing, an x line will never ever cross the y-axis. It's an x line, it only crosses the x-axis. So where would I put this dot? Well, probably at -4. So when I go over to 1, 2, 3, 4, I go to -4 on the x-axis because it's an x line. How am I going to draw a line that will never ever cross the y-axis? Okay, well, it'd have to be a vertical line. That line will never ever cross the y-axis because it's an x line, an x equals line. So it'll never ever cross the y-axis. Last piece here deals with writing an equation when given some information. So here it says write an equation in slope-intercept form of a line that has a slope of, remember that the slope-intercept is y equals mx plus b, where y and x will stay. Those don't change. So we fill in these values. Well, it gives us slope of -5 and y-intercept of 2. So when I go to write it in there, all I do is fill in those values. Slope is -5, x stays there, and y-intercept of 2. Okay, and b has a slope of 1/2 and goes through the point 0, -7. Okay, 0, -7. If I were to go up here, and let's just take, for example, up 0, -7. 0, -7, that's 0 in the x direction, and then -7. So what do you think is going to be the y-intercept? If it does not go anywhere in the x direction, and that's -7. If you guessed that it is -7 is my y-intercept, well then you're correct. So my y-intercept is -7, and then when I go to write it, y equals slope is 1/2, x stays, and -7. So there's that. Go ahead and try C and D on your own. Okay, there's the answers for C and D, and see if you got the correct answers. If you didn't get the correct answers, please let me know, and I can show you maybe what you did wrong. So the final piece here deals with graphs. You have a few examples here. Now you're given the graph and asked to find the equation. So just like before, you always want to start with your y-intercept. So when looking at example number 5, let me zoom in here. When looking at example number 5, where does it cross the y-axis? Where does that line cross the y-axis? Well, if you saw, it's right here. That value is 1. It crosses the y-axis at 1. With the slope, we've already done this. Remember, you have to find 2 points at which, well, we know it crosses at the y-intercept. But where else does it cross perfectly? And it looks like up here. Probably crosses perfectly. So we have to find the slope. We've already done this. We just did this in the last unit. Find the slope between those two lines. Now, it doesn't matter from what point to what point. Remember, change in y over change in x. Okay? So change in y is how much it goes up or down. So does it go up or down? Well, to get to this dot, looks like it goes down 2 over 3. Since it goes down, it's negative. It goes down 2 over 3. Down 2 over 3. So my slope is negative 2/3. So now, when we go to write our equation, all we need is our slope and our y-intercept. Y equals slope x plus 1, and that's it. Okay. Going to example number 6. Okay. Again, start with the y-intercept. Okay, it looks like it crosses right here, so that is a value of -1. And then from the slope, you know that it crosses right there. Where else does it cross? Looks like it crosses again right here. Now, this line is going up. So I know my slope is positive. How much up is it going? Well, up 1, and then it has to go over 2. So up 1 over 2. We go to write it. Y equals mx plus b, which is, oops, that is not right. Your y-intercept is -1. Okay, last one. Go ahead and try that example there, and then we'll move on. So here you'll see you run into a bit of a predicament here. It crosses at 0. That is a value. So if it crosses at 0, then your value is 0. That's why the b, your y-intercept, is 0. And then from there, up 1 over 2. So when we go to write this, y equals mx plus b, which is 0. Now, we don't actually need to write, plus 0, because that's just nothing. So you can actually just leave it like that. Okay, last part here, vertical lines and horizontal lines. Okay, vertical line, horizontal lines. This is a horizontal line. Notice how it just crosses the y-axis. So you know that it's going to be y equals, and then wherever it crosses at. Looks like it crosses right here at 3. So it'll be y equals 3. Whereas over here, vertical lines, okay, it only crosses the x-axis. It does not cross the y. It only crosses the x. So it's got to be an x equals wherever it crosses. Looks like at -2. That is it. for the notes. If you have any questions, please let me know as you are watching this, or you can send me a message on Canvas. Thanks.